My screen says we're streaming live.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. I'm just trying to make sure that it actually is working because sometimes the Zoom has a bit of a delay there. But let's take a look. All right, it looks like we are live. So for those of you who've been watching me stare at my screen awkwardly, I apologize for that, but here we go. So my name is Chris with New Latitude Event Solutions, and welcome to our October Lunch with Latitude. New Latitude focuses exclusively on working with not-for-profit organizations as they're facing development challenges and are forced to pivot when it comes to events. We focus on reimagining and redeveloping these events into socially distanced, no-contact hybrid events to bring your development goals to a new latitude in this new normal. Now today, we are focusing on cutting through the noise. With so many organizations out there going virtual, it's truly a challenge to make your event stand out from all of the rest. Fortunately, our panelists today have experience doing just that, and it's my honor to have them with us here today. So I'd like to start by introducing Amanda Converse. Amanda is the co-founder and CEO of Love Live Local. Love Live Local is dedicated to community advocacy and educating consumers on the importance of supporting small business with the goal of strengthening the economic vitality of the region and the overall sustainability of Cape Cod. The organization collaborates with businesses and community organizations to produce several Love Local Fests each year, as well as publishing the Love Local Field Guide and the Love Local Gift Guide that are focused on the Cape's locally made, grown, and crafted goods. And also running a retail store in downtown Hyannis stocked with locally made products and local brands. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'd also like to introduce David Keene. David Keene is the Executive Director of the Cotuit Center for the Arts. David arrived here on Cape in March of 2010 and spearheaded an initiative to introduce the patrons to the center, a little-known art center at the time. In his very brief 10 years, he has turned the Cotuit Center for the Arts into one of the Cape's most active cultural touchstones with activity in performing arts and education, and is right now in the midst of a major capital expansion initiative. David has said of his adopted home on Cape Cod, and I love this quote, that to be here is to have a love affair with the arts. It's a place where you're surrounded by beauty, and it's a place where artistic expression are celebrated. It is a place where diversity and experimentation are encouraged, and it is a place to feed your soul. David, it's great to have you as a part of our discussion group today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Chris.
And finally, an exciting addition to our panel, Roberta DiPietro, who is the Executive Director of the Greater Miami Festivals and Events Association. The GMFEA is comprised of most of South Florida's major annual festivals with the central purpose of promoting a year-round schedule of special events to residents and visitors. Currently, the association's membership totals over more than 100 festivals and special events groups, public agencies, institutions, and area businesses. And they are involved in producing an incredibly diverse range of community celebrations, including major arts, film, literary, and culinary events. And also parades, street festivals and fairs, youth competitions, and historic, environmental, national, and ethnic awareness events. Roberta, I'm so glad you could join us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to thank all of you for being a part of this panel, and I'm really looking forward to some great conversation. One of the first things I'd like to do is I'd like to discuss with each of you how you were able to conceptualize your pivots, your changes, and how you brought them from conception to reality. We've all been faced with some pretty dramatic choices in terms of our events and how we're going to move forward, what with the social requirements that the states have levied, and also personal responsibility, because I know in Florida they've lifted a lot of those restrictions, and yet we still want to be conscious of that. So I'm going to start up here on the Cape, and I want to start with Amanda, because you just recently had one of your Love Local Fests that you took virtual, and I wanted to kind of ask you, how did you come to that decision, and what did you do to make that change? What were some of the steps you had to take?
Yeah, well, so our Love Local Fest we've been putting on since 2013. And at this point, we have them 3 times a year, one in July, one in September, and one in December. And they are an event where we usually have 80 to 120 local makers, artists, artisans, businesses, brands. We have multiple bands playing throughout the day, food trucks, kids activities, thousands of people coming through. And knowing, we sort of had a sense pretty early on that they wouldn't be able to happen as we normally carry them out every year. So I think there was never a question in our mind that we were going to continue to do them. I think for a lot of different reasons. One is they are a signature of Love Live Local. It's how a lot of our community knows who we are, and it's how they identify us. Like a lot of organizations, it's also a fundraiser for us, and it enables us to do our advocacy work throughout the year. So it's a revenue stream that we greatly depend on. And also at the very heart of it was our vendors. A lot of our vendors they're all small businesses, but it's their sole income or their supplemental income, and they depend on it. And with every event canceled, throughout the summer on the Cape, where were they going to get any of this income? And so we set to work really trying to figure out how we would bring the event online. I think everybody sort of looked into it in the beginning, and then it's whether or not you have the capacity in your organization to figure out a whole new way of doing it. I mean, I keep saying this year was the year we were going to coast. We've been doing this since 2013, and we have a really mean system down for our in-person events, and it was really one we were looking forward to. And then of course it all blew up. But we started by looking at the event and saying, okay, how do we make the whole thing happen as it exists now, but move it online, right? And then taking it from there, and saying, all right, is that all feasible? Are we going to have, I had this imaginary program in mind where people could click on these vendors and shop them right away. And, basically the program doesn't exist that I would want for our event. And then how do we have the bands playing, and how do we capture people's attention for an entire day in the middle of the summer when they've been on their computer screen, right, for nonstop for months. And so it really was about conceptualizing the elements that make our event unique, and bringing that online in a way that then the consumer will meet that moment and actually execute what we hope we want them to do, which is to shop local and shop with our local vendors.
That's great. What sort of response did you get to the event when you put it on?
So, the program that and I don't know if you want me to get into this now, but what we decided to do is to, instead of having an event that lasted a day, we stretched it to a week. And so it's a week of basically online shopping, connecting with our vendors, learning about our local makers, but doing it in a way that people can do it at their convenience, right? So on our webpage, we have vendor booths, which consisted of a video from each of the vendors. So they are introducing themselves, their products, because that's really what people love about our events is connecting with the local makers and actually having a conversation with them or seeing what they're all about and learning their story. And so that directly linked to their websites. So we got to tell their stories on our webpage. And then we created a dedicated Facebook group where throughout that week of the festival, our vendors were allowed to post in the group. So they could post new products, they could post their stories, they could post a sale, they could post free shipping, and we have, the group is now up to over 2,000 people. So they are on there, and it's a dedicated, basically, shopping group for just the vendors who participate with us in the festival. And the vendors, we have a core group of probably 35 of them who were on board, ready to go. We're making videos of themselves and really getting into it and trying to embrace it, and connect and continue to connect with consumers. And so I think the consumers were able to then shop them in the group, and then on our webpage as well, and really, and then throughout that whole thing, we infuse our message about why it's so important to support them, and to support our local businesses. It's not just anecdotal, it really is economically so much better for our area. So we kind of basically took the elements that we felt set our event apart and fed our mission, and presented them to the public.
It's great. That's fantastic. It's interesting how, people who have been doing, what are essentially street events or vendor events like that have had to switch and turn themselves into, production companies,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, because you have to learn all of this new technology and all of this new approach.
Yeah.
It makes me want to ask David. So David, you're at the Katuitt Center, you pretty much specialize in producing. That's what you do. You produce events, you produce art gallery openings, you produce classes, and most prominently, I don't want to say most importantly, but most prominently, one of the biggest things you do is you produce concerts and theatrical performances. So you recently had to take your production experience and really turn it for, I think it was just this past weekend, you had your Entertainment Tonight event, correct?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so tell me how production for you has changed from what you're used to doing and the systems that all work. Kind of like what Amanda was saying, how it was kind of plug and play. You're kind of used to doing it this certain way. It's never easy, but you've got this routine down. And then suddenly you have this entire new way of having to do things. And how did you and your team address that?
Sure. I was smiling because many people thought, well, you guys already produce all this stuff. It's easy. And, that any Broadway theater would tell you that, our product is live people coming together, sharing live experiences in the same room. So television production and studio recording have nothing to do with what we've ever done in the past. So it was a big challenge, and we knew back in March when we had to close that changes had to be made. So the first things that we did was we reconfigured the theater so that we took the stage apart, we took all of the seating out, and we have basically a 10,000 square foot flat floor that's rectangular, so that when we could start engaging people in person again, we had maximum flexibility in terms of distance from patrons from one another, from the stage, and all of that, in anticipation of the live stuff. Meanwhile, though, we needed to stay connected to the community for what we assumed would be through the 4th of July when everything got back to normal. And in that time, we did invest in some camera equipment, streaming cameras. We upgraded some of our sound technology because the quality of what goes out online has to be at a higher level than what we would normally do. And one of the reasons we don't have this capability is that for theatrical productions in particular, we only record shows for archival purposes because they're intellectual property issues there. So we don't ever record anything with the idea that it will be used for anything other than educational purposes, maybe down the line. So we made those pivots early on. And then as time went by, we realized you can have a really high quality HD camera, but you may not know how to use it effectively. And the same thing for some of the audio. We also learned that data is important, and in trying to figure out what really works for us in the new medium, we looked a lot at how many people tend to tune in to events that are not Hamilton. So like a local, because a lot of people say, oh, well, this is great, you can reach people in Japan, who it's like, well, yeah, we can, but is that really what our audience is and our mission? So we learned that people like to tune in and out, and there is Zoom fatigue, there's screen fatigue. So we went from the first thing we did that was called Virtual Decadence, where it was really a reunion of musical theater performers from the Cave. And there were 3 very long nights, about 2 hours each night, of actors reprising roles from past productions from 10 years. It was a beautiful thing to do, but it wasn't really an audience thing to do. It was like an internal thing to do. So we then said, well, maybe what we should be doing is focusing on 15 to 20-minute, like little bonbons of performance that we can put on our Latitude on demand page. And then as we were doing that, our quality got good enough so that we could do our first pay-per-view streamed event. So all of those, it's a little long-winded, but it's a way of saying that each decision led to an acknowledgement of what we don't know yet. And keep in mind also that, like everyone else, we have less than half our normal staff, doing this. So, we have all non-professionals with no additional help, trying to, have this very, very fast learning curve. And we're still doing that now, but it's proving to be effective. And I think by the time we got to Entertainment Tonight, similar, Amanda, to what you were saying, we decided that people who come to our big gala every year want a party in person. So we can't recreate that virtually. But what we can do is focus 1 hour each night on a different aspect of our business and schedule each hour so that if you tune in at 7:15 and you leave at 7:30, you hopefully had a meaningful experience. And then when it's over, it's up there forever for you to go back and check at your will. So that's kind of where the big picture of what we've been doing since March.
Well, you've done a great job getting the voice out there and being able to stay active in the community. I think, especially for arts organizations right now, prominence is key. You really need to be out there. If you circle the wagons and you shut down and hope things are going to pass, you're going to pass into oblivion, is what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And David, you and I have worked quite a bit over at the Katuitt Center, and it's always a pleasure working there and working with you guys and just being able to see all of the different wheels that are turning, all the different things that you're trying to accomplish and engage the community on are very, very impressive.
Well, if I could, I don't want to suck up too much time, but I would like to mention that if I could turn back time, as Cher would say, that it was late August, early September before we actually did anything outdoors, partially because we had to get an entertainment license in order to do it. But is it okay if I talk about it, Chris? Chris was in a production of The Zoo Story, a 2-person play that is set in Central Park that we did on the lawn in between our 2 main buildings on the campus, which was a huge success. We made it free. We sold out every night, asked for donations, and that was also, people were so happy to have somewhere to go and feel safe. The way the ushers socially distanced the audience, and you guys were terrific. We upgraded the sound system so you could hear every word, even with the traffic on 28. So that was a highlight for me of the summer.
Well, thank you for saying that. Something that you did mention is something I do want to latch onto, which is that you made the event free. And a lot of the virtual programming has been free. And I know you mentioned you did have recently a foray into a pay-for-play or a pay-per-view type of situation. And one of the realities right now is there is so much material out there. Trying to find a way to generate revenue and generate a profit is a real challenge. People are tuning into things expecting them to not have a cost attached, and then you're hoping to make your money on the back end with donations. And like Amanda, with the festivals that you held online, very similar. You have to have all of this material to put all of this investment up front, and you hope that your vendors are going to get that money after they invest that time on the back end. I want to throw it over to Roberta, who has got multiple organizations that are dealing with this and struggling with this right now down in Miami, in the Miami area. So many organizations competing for a voice in the market. And what I loved when I was down in the Miami area is I loved how all of the organizations truly worked together, even organizations that were in the same industry and kind of playing in the same field. It was always impressive how well organizations supported each other because, well, for one thing, some of the events in the Miami area are so big, they're too big for one small group to handle. You've got to have a whole bunch of people collaborating. But for the shifts that have happened down in Florida, how have your organizations been able to, like I said, cut through the noise? How have they been able to distinguish themselves from every other small organization that says, we'll just go virtual, or we'll just send a fundraiser out and we'll do a recording?
Well, as you know, Florida is unique. Miami, more unique. So back in March, our organization was planning our annual conference, which is held in June. And I was in California, March 3rd through the 13th. And California was a little ahead of everything. So they were like panicking. And I know our big event, the county fair, opens on March 12th. And it opens on March 12th at 4 o'clock. It was ready to go. At noon, the government shut them down. So there they were with everything. And that is their whole income stream for the year. So they were the first ones to kind of, I wouldn't even call it pivot, I would call it punt. They had a fair food drive-through. So you drive in, you order your cotton candy,
Yeah, I
your
love that.
candy apples, your elephant ears, your corn, your sausage rolls, whatever. And it was all created by another one of our members, the app that they did online. So one of our vendors is a ticketing company, and they handled that part of it. Then we had one of our vendors who helped with the food service. And
By the
then
way, Roberta, not to interrupt, but you can mention them by name. We're not restricted. I want to support your members as well. So feel free to trumpet them a little bit.
I'll get back to them. Complete Ticket Solutions is, like what they said, solutions for everything. They've come up with all kinds of solutions for our members trying to recreate. So anyway, so they had this food fair drive-in. It was so successful. It was like ridiculous. So they did it several weekends. Then they started doing the first drive-in movies, and they planned it all out again with Complete Ticket Solutions handling food service. So you would get a space where you could pull out chairs if you wanted. You had a box, you had a number, and you ordered your food by number. You paid ahead, and somebody delivered it to your area. And in that area, it was a huge area because it was your car, and I think you had room for 4 chairs, or you could sit in the car or back it up and sit in the back. Anyway, so they did some of the first kind of, let's do something different. While the rest of the world was trying to figure out, I mean, whoever heard of Zoom in January, So the rest of the world's trying to figure out, oh, we're going to go virtual. But okay, it's okay to say that, but getting down to it, what does that really mean for the opera, the symphony? I mean, all our bigs. So they were doing little vignette type things just to keep audience attention, of course. And they were successful. Some of the events that went virtual were very successful, some not so much, but it's been, we have so many events going on that this kind of weeded out some, unfortunately, and only the bigger ones were able to continue the virtual. We actually, thinking like David, that people were over the whole, like looking at a screen all day. And I feel so bad for our school kids because I can't do it. But anyway, we took our conference, which is a 1-day conference, and we spread it out to 1 hour a week for 3 weeks and had 3 great educational sessions where people were engaged, and we did have a lot of attention on that from our people. We have AAA Flag and Banner. They're the ones that make all the banners that hang on this the light poles and things like that. Well, she started making hand sanitizer stations where you could put either your company name on it or your sponsor's name on it. And that was something we were trying to do to, also connect with our sponsors, because that's a huge part of what we do. And they are nervous about getting involved in anything. So she also did the floor signs, stay here, 6 feet apart, posters, wash your hands, flyers, flags, COVID testing. So she turned all her experience with making banners, promoting our events, to COVID type things. And now, okay, so we had the whole virtual thing. We had the biggest ones we had was Calle Ocho. We just had Calle Ocho, which is a huge street fair, huge, with multiple stages and food and people shoulder to shoulder for hours all day. They just did virtual, and it was very successful. And they did get a lot of attention, not just locally like they normally would. Well, people come in for that too, but because of the virtual, they got attention from what they're hoping is people all over the world that watched it, that maybe they'll come to the live event next year. So that's what they're counting on. 2 weekends ago, well, first of all, in September, I think it was 25th, our governor decided that it's over. So he opened restaurants to full capacity. He banned local governments from imposing fines on people not wearing masks. And he allowed, just in Dade and Broward County, the local government to impose only a 50% capacity at bars. Now, our events are starting to be in person. So the Las Olas Art Fair was 2 weeks ago. It's a street fair with art vendors. It is fenced, and they only allowed a certain number of people. You had to schedule a time, and that, I think, was very successful. And today we are starting live in person the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show, which is huge. And again, Complete Ticket Systems is running that. Everything is digital. Your tickets online. You don't touch anything. You show your phone. The workers are in masks and face shields. The attendees are encouraged to wear masks. They've updated all the cleaning, sanitizing before you get on one of the boats. There's hand sanitizers, there's thermal imaging. So that's gone. So we, in Florida, which our cases are extremely rising, our events are opening in person. Our book fair, Miami International Book Fair, which is a huge event in November, they decided to stay virtual because they're a big street fair with shoulder to shoulder. So they're going virtual. They're having author visits. They have a book club for young adults, book club for kids, all virtual. So that's all going virtual. So there's so many things going on here. We have something, one of our groups is doing cocktails and barbecue. I can't remember who that was. Anyway, so you sign up, and this is something we did. We did a virtual wine tour where everybody that signed in ordered wine, and we had a person take us on a tour of the part of, I think it was Italy, that the wine came from, and explained all the different wines and how they make it and all that. And it was a great time. We did wine tasting, and we're having another one coming up for the holidays. But this one is you order the drink. There's a special drink. There's a mixologist that'll come online and show you how to mix your drink with the ingredients. And then you can order this barbecue package from this local barbecue company. So things like that are happening, and people are doing it in their, I don't know, families, their bubbles, their cohorts. So we've got just so many things happening. Our museums are opening, maybe not at full capacity. Everything has a pathway. We have a lot of gardens that are tourist gardens. They're open with one-way direction, the 6 feet apart stepping stones. So so much is happening here.
It's interesting when you talk about Florida and the situation, how the governor has loosened some of those restrictions, which a little pitch for some of what I do. If you're watching this webinar, I also do a weekly video with a little bit of information about event planning and event processing and some little tidbits. And one of the drums that I beat fairly regularly is that you as an event producer or you as an event manager are responsible for your own event. You set the rules for your event. So if you do anything in person, your rules are the rules that you follow. Now, when you set your rules up, you set them up so that they adhere as closely as you can to the state guidelines, and you always err on the side of caution. But what I like hearing from you, Roberta, is these organizations like Complete Tickets are really trying to be conscious of not just throwing the gates open. And anybody who's watching at home, who is an event producer who's curious about that, I would encourage you, make sure that you have the right PPE equipment. Make sure that you have somebody who is a trained COVID compliance officer if possible, or at least somebody who's responsible for that. And make sure, the most important thing is make sure that you're enforcing your own rules. If you have rules about distancing, if you have rules about masks, stick to them. And if somebody says, well, I'm not going to wear the mask, I'm like, well, then you don't get to come in, because it's not a matter of, what that person wants. It's the organization executing the event, executing the activities in person. You're, as an event executor, as an event producer, you're calling the shots. So you are the boss of that event, and you should feel comfortable in backing that up. One of the things I've said in the past is, the minute you make an exception, the minute you look the other way because somebody's giving you a hard time, everybody else at your event looks at that and says, oh, well, then if that person's not going to be safe, what else are they skimping on? Where else are they cutting corners? Where else are they making exceptions? And that's not what you want to do. Yes, you might have one person who walks away a little frustrated, but you have a lot of other people who are going to be appreciative of the fact that you are sticking to your guns and you're staying by your rules. I do want to bring something up that you mentioned, Roberta, and I want to throw it back over to David and Amanda. You brought up sponsorship, and I've often said many times that sponsorship is really key when it comes to producing these events. And very often when I've seen people who are not experienced event professionals, or who are struggling with trying to figure out what to do, major sponsors and major contributors can often get overlooked. It's very easy to overlook those things. And I think that it's important that you maintain relationships with your sponsors and make sure they know that they're getting that exposure and the recognition for supporting your events. And I know that Amanda and David, both of you have got significant sponsorship support and have also gone out of your way and done an excellent job of recognizing those sponsors. So I'd love for you guys to speak to how, in this virtual reality, in this online event situation, you're able to address your sponsors and your sponsor needs in a way that speaks to their level of support.
I can go, David, if you.
Sure.
We were very fortunate that our major sponsor for our Love Local Fest is Cape Cod 5, and they were very keen to keep supporting the event if we were going to execute it, which was really they've been an incredible community partner for us, and but we also didn't want to take that for granted, and so I think what we've done from the very start of this is just kept them in the loop with everything that we've been thinking and doing in terms of the changes, and then outlining in every change that we've made how we will recognize them. through that. And so, with the in-person event, obviously they have a tent there, they have their banners up, but online we have, because it's a week long now, we have the ability to recognize them every single day. And I can count, we've had hundreds of thousands of views on our social media posts, with their logo on it. And so it was kind of communicating to them what we were going to bring them, or what we were going to be able to offer them in this new sort of event format, and being creative. Where can we infuse it? In the beginning, in the July Fest, we did an intro video and had their banner up. It's kind of trying to figure out where can we recognize them within this new model, and then afterwards tracking it and letting them know, this is a different way of exposure for you and for us together, but we're working hard for you. And again, we're just so lucky that they are a great community partner, and they did say that they were impressed that we had no intention of ever canceling it. And I think that spoke volumes to them about our commitment to our mission and to our vendors and to the event. And so they said that they wanted to, stick with us as well.
And
David, how about your sponsors?
well, I would say that one of the challenges of living in a place like the Cape is that there are very few huge corporate sponsors, and the business community really supports so many organizations, and it's critical to remember that everybody is suffering through COVID.
Little
So
feedback loop there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I mean, we're the same thing. Like, we produce like 10,000 of these 3 times a year, that just went out the window in March. So to message, well, what is the value we can bring? In some cases, our local sponsors are in kind, so that's a little bit easier. And similar to what Amanda said, where we have an online presence with sponsors. When we do online YouTube events, we generally half an hour before the event have a sponsor loop. And then this comes down to bandwidth again, where our desire, our big dream is that for our really major sponsors, we want to produce a commercial that is designed for the new medium, that can roll before anything we do virtually. And we so far we just don't have that bandwidth. Our sponsors don't have the bandwidth to make their own. We could say, oh, just do a quick commercial on your phone. Then the quality issue comes up again. And so there's so many, and Chris, to your point too, that like once you go down a certain road, it's really hard to come back. So we're trying to make sure that we do the right thing in that regard. And furthermore, it's about communication. And Amanda, like you said, the loop, understanding that we're all in this together and that we need our sponsor support, and we'll do everything we can to help them through this crisis as well, because our reach is really broad. But we're just going through a thing together that we look at these as partnerships more than a sponsorship.
Yeah. And they did, express, I think a lot of them, the people who were able to maintain their level of sponsorship were saying, we actually lost a lot of opportunity to connect with the public. So having these things available to them is beneficial to them as well.
Yeah.
And, as David said, yes, of course, like there are a lot of people a lot of local businesses that are suffering through this. And, and with our vendors, for example, we lowered the fee, halved the fee, to be able to participate in this. And so, just trying to kind of like take care of each other while also, trying to keep us going as well. So it's an incredible balancing act for sure.
I can appreciate the tightrope that you have to walk in order to be able to do that, because it is important to get that messaging out there, but it's such a challenge. You mentioned the bandwidth and trying to explore some different opportunities. I know Roberta has worked with Complete Ticket Solutions, and they're very good at creating their own software solutions. They've got some folks who do some in-house coding for them, and they're very good. I myself have been able to do a little bit of experimenting, and I found a few platforms that work pretty well for different types of things. I'm wondering, David and Amanda, if you have found any particular programs in, I mean, Amanda, you mentioned the shop that you were looking for, and I'm guessing even though it didn't really reach what you
Didn't
wanted to do,
exist.
you may have found something
Yeah. Well, and it was,
similar or something to do what you were looking for.
yeah, I attended so many webinars for so many programs, and there isn't any, there are a lot of great ones for trade shows, which is different, right? It's not a commerce, like buying something from somebody, and we're not going to set up an individual website on this program. So and also our capacity, our organization, like David said, his staff is halved. I'm the only full-time person that works for Level of Local. We have, I have a part-time, my other co-founder is, 10 to 12 hours a week. So it's really like, what could I execute? Because, our board, they're all dealing with their stuff, and our volunteers are dealing with their stuff. So it really was what is at our fingertips. And and we're very fortunate that, we have a great supporter he's a videographer, and he was willing to kind of step in and help us with that element of things. But really it was what exists already that we are able to work with and use. And so, our website definitely, and we are fortunate enough that we built a pretty strong social media following over the years. That's how we built our brand, was online. And so we had a pretty good foundation going into it in terms of being able to reach a lot of people, to communicate with them. But even using the Facebook, which everybody's on, Instagram, and our website, communicating to consumers about how to do it, even if you think it's the simplest thing in the world, that's part of our marketing campaign around the whole event, is like, this is how you do it. And I think we're poised for our holiday fest for people to be like, oh, I get it now, because we've been through July, September. But before it was like, what? Facebook groups? I don't understand, and so we just really had to, and everybody's cup is full. So, they're not anything new. It's like, I don't understand and I don't have the capacity. So that was a huge important part of it too, was communicating to consumers, even though it was like, simply visit this website, go on our Instagram stories, and go on this Facebook group. We had to keep telling people, this is how you attend our virtual event.
We have a new vendor, and he runs Deggy World. And what this is you become, you create an avatar, and he has like trade show spots that you can run a trade show, and people walk around with their little character and talk to the people in the trade show. He has conference rooms, he has auditoriums. So it's a whole new thing that's coming out for the virtual. And that's been something really unique and different. There's a whole outdoor concert area where you can watch somebody live in a concert, and you're there, and there's a button you can push and make yourself dance. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's
Oh, that's awesome.
You can sit on the beach, But anyway, he does have the trade show. He has the conference room. He's got all kinds of different layouts as a virtual venue for some of our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to, I've got another topic I want to jump to, but we do have folks who are watching, and I did want to invite you guys, we've got a few minutes left. If any of you at home who are watching this webinar have any questions that you wanted to ask of our panelists, please feel free to send it. If you're in the Zoom, if you've registered for the Zoom webinar, you can go to the Q&A section. You can send a question through that. If you're on Facebook, I will try to access any questions that you have in our general chat room. One of the things that I want to ask you guys, it goes back to the idea of virtual events. I have heard a number of different things in terms of virtual events, which, but what I get consistently back is if you have a major event, and then you've taken it virtual, you can pretty much expect about a 40 to 45% return on what your previous years, your previous years, I don't want to say profits, but your gross, I guess. Whatever it is you get the year before, you're looking at probably about 40 to 45% by taking it virtual. And I'm curious, you know, if that's the benchmark for success, what are you guys doing to, like, how are you identifying a successful virtual event? Is it based on views? Is it based on revenue? Is it based on income, sales? Like, what constitutes a successful event in your eyes? And that's for anybody.
Well, I think it's a tough question for me to answer because there's so many different types of events. For the zoo story, which was you know, maybe that's not fair because it was in person, and but we made it free. We didn't charge people. We asked for donations, and we ended up taking in about as much as we would have if it had been a regular production that had been planned indoors. For the other free content that we're putting out, asking for donations, and you know, it's been pretty minimal, frankly. But the point there was that it's gravy. They weren't fundraising goals with a specific target. But certainly, what I found and what I believe is that people want to tune in to an organization they love and support for a little while to experience a little something. But for the most part, nobody really wants to tune into a fundraising event sitting at their desk or on their home TV. So it's trying to figure out that balance of, you know, Amanda, like you said, of running it through the course of a week and just keep putting the message out there and stretching it out a little bit. And so I didn't really answer your question, Chris, but I'm not. I'm a really positive person, but I'm not in the camp of that this is all a great new, you know, opportunity and thing in terms of fundraising. I think it's purely engaging, and for the philanthropy and the what it takes to keep nonprofit organizations going, that our whole strategy is still shifting, and 2021 will be the biggest challenge I think any of us have ever faced.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I definitely would agree with that.
I mean, so many of the events are free that it's a lot of them are just how many views, how many people are we reaching? Are they new people? Are these people that we can capture their information so that when we can go back, that they'll be wanting to come to our event in person?
Yeah, that's what, you know, for us, the income is not, we're probably operating at 20% of what we've usually brought in. But for us, and we're measuring views, likes, engagement on, you know, all the social media, and that's not anything we've ever done with our events before, which that we will adopt, I think, you know, going forward. And just in terms of gauging those numbers and seeing, you know, why was it lower this time? Why, you know, what can we do differently? But for us, the success is if we've asked our vendors after both events so far, you know, how they've done. And a successful event to us is if they say it was a positive experience for them. And for them right now, a positive experience is, yes, sales, which, you know, across the board, everyone said it's not going to match our in-person events, which is why, you know, we're going back to in-person as soon as we possibly can. But they've also gotten through this. They've gotten a lot of new followers, which is great. If they can translate that into sales in the future, that's amazing. That's not something that our in-person events have done for them necessarily in great volume. You know, because people are at the festivals, they're not on their phones liking things. And so that's a good thing. They've said they've gotten a lot of new engagement. So like Roberta said, if they keep coming back and become a loyal customer, that's a good thing. And, you know, and we did reach people who weren't able to come to the Cape this summer and shop with their favorite local vendors and local businesses. And we had vendors saying they were mailing stuff all over the country, which is great. You know, we were able to kind of reach people off Cape who love the Cape. So, you know, that's good too. But it's just so funny, the metric for success. It's just so, it's so different, and it's going to vary, I think, every single time.
It changes with every single event. I mean, it
Mhm.
really does. I look at the nonprofit organizations out there that are, you know, not retail based so much as yours, but I'm thinking more of, you know, David, the Katuitt Center. I think about NPR, who really created that donation model, um, and what they do, and the way that they are successful in fundraising is they just keep asking. They just keep asking because
Yeah.
nobody ever donates. That I've never turned NPR, heard a broadcast the first time, and sat around and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to make a donation." But man, they wear you down.
Mhm.
And you hear it and you hear it, and eventually you're kind of like, you know, I've been putting a lot of time in on this. I've invested myself. This is worth me making a contribution. This is worth me making a donation.
Well, and I think that's a very important point in terms of communicating in general, is there is a lot of noise out there, like you were, you know, and so you might be tired of hearing what you're saying, but chances are it might be the first time somebody's hearing it, which is why, you know, when we're communicating how to shop the fest, it's like we're like, how we're a broken record, but it really, it's, you've got to keep that messaging going until people absorb it.
Yeah, and
that's
I would
something we
add to
used to
that
say.
with such a sense of gratitude, and that you know, to the fact that every dollar counts, it absolutely does, and there's so much appreciation for, you know, every level of support.
Yes.
But you're right, both everyone. You just have to keep that. You just have to keep pounding that message.
Yep.
Well, it's you know, Roberta will appreciate this, but back in my festival entertainment days, that was something we used to tell the street entertainers and the performers and everything. It's like, it might not be new to you, but your audience changes every time you move 10 or 15 feet. You know, it's an entirely new group of people. And they've never heard your joke before. They've never heard your pitch before. They've never seen your product before. And it's the same thing as with a street fair or anything like that where you have a vendor. It's like you mentioned, Amanda, you know, the level of local folks, they if it's a live event and people are walking by, it's a different group of people. Every 2 minutes you get a different crowd that's walked by you. So if you're doing any sort of broadcasting or any sort of interaction or anything like that, it's the same idea. It's you have your messaging. If you keep repeating it and you keep repeating it, it's not, it may sound tired to you, but the people who are watching, the people who tuned in for that brief moment, David, that you had mentioned, and they watched that 15-minute sliver, well, they didn't hear your pitch 20 minutes ago. They caught this one, and then there's the other one that you catch. So it is important. I think that repetition and consistency and consistency of messaging, repetition, those are all very important things. And I think one of the big takeaways that I get from all of our conversations is innovation is really key to making sure that we're staying out in front of what other folks are doing, and the quality of what you're doing. You know, David, you spoke to that quite a bit, and Amanda, you did, and Roberta, you spoke about the organizations in Miami that have really, the larger organizations being able to distinguish themselves because of the ability to put that quality out there. You know, like me, you know, I'm a guy, I'm in my office and I've got a ring light and I'm doing this. And how does this separate? Well, what makes this webinar different from every other webinar that's out there? Well, one, I've got a hell of a panel here of people who are doing some great stuff, and they're offering some really great insights, which I really appreciate. And you guys have been wonderful.
Well, and I think ask for help too, ask for advice, ask for, you know, I was just talking to a woman up in Boston who's running an event up there, and we were exchanging ideas, and, you know, and I think that's key too, is just reach out. People are willing to help right now, you know, I mean, all the time really, but like right now, I think we really truly are all in this together. So.
Right.
We've
We
got just a
have
couple.
yeah, we just have a happy hour every other Wednesday for anyone that's in the business to get together and share. And that's been critical.
The last thing I want to do before I let you guys go, because we just have a couple moments left, I just want to go around the group one more time and just ask all of you what your parting thoughts are when it comes to, you know, what you're going to be doing next and how you're going to bring your next projects to the next level. And I know I know David and Amanda, you both have just kind of finished an event and you're kind of like put it on a shelf. But I also know that folks like you, your gears are always going. So I'm just curious as to, what did you learn? What's your takeaway? And what do you see next?
Yeah, I mean, I think after each the July and the September, we evaluate what were the elements we did, what was successful, and then I actually am planning for our next one starts December 5th. So we're just trying to figure out what's the best angle for this event. And it's right before the holiday season, people want to shop local. And so I think that we're going to be doing a lot more PR around the importance of shopping local for the holidays, and just kind of and retailoring the event around that PSA element of it, as well as introducing the vendors to the consumer public.
We are planning weekly content, both live and virtual, that we have the room set so that that it's not as stressful on the organization to go from filming something to having the room ready for something else. And we have really big plans for the art gallery next year, both virtual and then the top thing on my list is starting to figure out how we do outdoor entertainment next year, so that no matter what we're doing indoors, we're able to supplement it with outdoors.
I think emphasizing collaboration amongst our people and opening slowly and safely, and then looking at the results. That's where we're at in Miami.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much. I want to once again thank my panel, Amanda Converse, the co-founder and CEO of Love Live Local, David Keene, the Executive Director of the Katuitt Center for the Arts, and Roberta DiPietro, the Executive Director of the Greater Miami Festivals and Events Association. I really appreciate your time today and your conversation and your insights. It's been wonderful.
It's my pleasure.
My name is Chris. I am the founder of New Latitude Event Solutions. New Latitude, we are an organization where if your organization is trying to plan some major events or is kind of stuck and looking for some ideas to help themselves with their next major event, be it virtual, hybrid, or in person, give us a call. That's what we're here to do and help you out. New Latitude Event Solutions will help you reimagine your event and bring out your development goals, bring them up to a new latitude. You can find us on Facebook. New Latitude Event Solutions, elevate your expectations. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of this day, wherever you are, be it in sunny, warm Miami or somewhat cold and murky Cape. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Chris.